Thank you all. I want to introduce Sheryl Eder. She's from the Bay Pines VA Center in Florida. Please welcome Sheryl.
Thank you, Mike. I brought backup paper. Woot, woot. So I had to try to teach this guy how to woot last night. He didn't know how to woot. He was going, oh, oh. Good morning, everybody. It's really great to see all of you here today. It's very exciting to come to this conference and see how many people really and truly do share in our passion for making sure we get this right. I put this thing together, and it's a very long title for how to get along in the sandbox. So I wanted to start out my presentation to let you meet Tank. If you look at this picture, you will see that I accidentally color coordinated my bedroom to my dog, which tells you everything you need to know about me. This is his sister, Sophia, and Sophia is a diva, but she knows who the alpha is. So our presentation objections are, we've got to identify some common goals: surgery, OR, sterile processing, supply chain. We were going to talk about some issues surrounding miscommunication with that team. Identify obstacles for safe use of our reusable and disposable items, and talk about tools to increase quality, increase interdepartmental collaboration, and communication. Our shared goal. So from the time that before we even purchase, we need to manage our reusable medical equipment. So maintenance and reprocessing from cradle to grave. Use and handling through the whole cycle. Interdisciplinary communication, it's all vital. So why? Why can't we get it right? We all have the same goal. What's in the way? What are our roadblocks? What is standing in the way? And we've talked about a lot of this all throughout the conference. The nice thing about this conference is it's not always a whole lot of this. People sitting out there and somebody standing up here and talking at you. We've been talking with each other. What are our roadblocks? So, complexity theory. Most of us know where we fit in the healthcare system. Conscientious doctors, nurses, technicians, we all know our processes. We all know our systems. How many of you are old enough to remember when there was a doctor in your community that did everything? He was the pediatrician, he was the surgeon, he would set your arm if you broke it. Maybe none of you are old enough to remember that, but I am. And we have become a nation of super specialists. So what they do is not complicated to them anymore, right? But the complexity where they fit in the system is. What it boils down to is the reason that sterile processing frequently gets underestimated by our customers is because they don't understand what we do. They really, really don't. And I'm also old enough that when I went to the operating room in 1990, they made me spend 3 weeks in SPD. And I developed friendships there that I still have today. And it also gave me a glimpse into the real world where things happen. But nobody really gets what you do unless they do it too. And they're busy making sure they know what they're doing, right? So, I mean, how hard is this anyway? Come on. You're just washing something, right? How hard can it be? So I like to start with what happens whenever the instruments go into the magic box, right? The magic box is where you push the cart into the elevator, it goes down, and clean stuff comes out on the other side, right? What our customers don't know is that there's an awful lot that goes on in that magic box. I'm feeding back. 40 to 70% of instrumentation are not even used during a procedure, right? But we don't know what got used and what didn't when it goes into the magic box. They still have to be processed, just as though they were used. We treat everything just like it was drugged through a puddle of Ebola, right? So we treat everything that way. But in a major medical center, about 37,000 instruments a day will flow through that decon area. Some were used, some were not. Some were pre-treated, some were not. We heard someone talk a bit ago about finding out about a CJD. It doesn't look any different. The instruments don't look any different when they've been exposed to prions. One of the things that I found was, you know, those lovely trauma trays that have all the plates and screws and drill bits and wires, and so if that stuff gets blood on it, we're not supposed to reprocess it. If you look at the IFU, those implants, if they're exposed to blood, are to be discarded. Does anybody ever tell a scrub tech or a doctor that? How many of you have a scrub tech background? How many of you seen a doctor take a plate out of a tray and stick it in the wound and say, yeah, okay, and rinse it off and put it back in the tray? Because they don't know. They don't know that you can't do that. So one of the things we have to be able to communicate to them is this complexity thing. By decreasing the variation in number of instruments in the set, the closer attention we can pay to each one of those instruments and making sure that they are just as good the last day we use it as the first day we used it. So we got them in prep. We still have to check the IFU. We have to look at these instruments. I have a plastics tray in my facility that the chief of plastics will not let me decrease. It has 115 instruments in it. It's a plastics tray. It has 115 instruments in it. And every single one of them has to get turned over, right? Every single one of them has to be looked at. Every one of the 15 scissors in there needs to be checked because we don't know which ones he used. We don't know. We know it's only like 4 every time it comes into decon. There might have been 4, but, and they don't know why we can't turn those trays over quickly. It's just a few instruments. So, and then this is the fun part. Trying to figure out how to make 3 sterilizers do 15 different sterilization cycles in one 24-hour period, right? How many sterilizer cycles do you guys have? So we were looking, we identified all these sterilizer cycles, and the staff said, the IFU says 4 minutes. Why are we doing it for 10? I said, good question. It happened before I got here, but let's fix it. What do we have to do, right? That's still a process that we're doing. So yeah, here's another one of our issues, training and education. And I started out in sterile processing as an educator, and I became really, really passionate about this when I realized that the reason our folks get underestimated is because they don't want to pay us for what we do, right? If sterile processing were a brand new job that they're just coming up with, what should it be for somebody? So my hairdresser had to go to school. He had to get a license. He has to do continuing education. He's licensed by the state to cut my hair. But in the state of Florida, you don't even have to have a high school diploma to work in Central Sterile. It is, to me, it's an issue of not understanding the job. The people that make the decisions, they don't understand the job. This would require to me, okay, you guys have been doing this for a while. Don't you think it would take at least a good 2-year college degree to get the information into you that you've had to get as best you can, right? So training and education is really, really big. You guys have to do, us guys, we have to do college level complexity. And we learn it on the job. budget. So economic constraints say we have to be tighter and leaner with our inventory management. So our folks are having to do a whole lot more, sometimes with a whole lot less. That system complexity we were talking about, I was at a facility, had to do an IFU, not an IFU, excuse me, I had to do an SOP for Da Vinci, the pre-treatment for Da Vinci in the operating room. When they used the manufacturer's instructions for use, the SOP was 16 pages long. 16 pages long to prepare the instrument to be cleaned. That complexity it's insane now, and it gets more and more and more difficult all the time. And a lot of our CS people do not have a SPS background, an operating room background. So when you call down and you say, I need a schnitt, and God bless you, or I need a tonsil, or I need a Kelly, or I need a peon, they're the same things, but they're different. So we have one at Bay Pines. He calls it Gumby. It's a flexible clamp. He calls it a Gumby. So they call down from the operating room and send me Dr. Goodgame's Gumby. We don't know what that is. So one of the other things is preference-based selection. How many of you have trays that are called Dr. So-and-so's so-and-so? Almost everybody, right? Preference-based selection. I understand that people want to work with what they trained with, but when you have 40 surgeons, something's got to give somewhere. So a preference-based selection, everybody wants what they want. Everybody wants what they're comfortable with. I am very comfortable with being taken around in a chauffeur-driven limousine. I am so comfortable with that. But it's not in the budget. It's not reasonable. It's not practical. And I can't afford it. And that's kind of the way it is with us. Our inventory is out of control now, because rather than using an evidence base, what works best? And everybody needs to get used to what works best, because this is what we use here. And if you have something that's better, prove to me it's better, and everybody can use that instead, right? For example, we had 2 small bone systems, shavers, arthroscopic shavers, 2 different kinds. The IFUs for the 2 of them are so different that if you use the instructions for one on the other, you'll break it. So that not only did we have 2 different kinds and nobody knew which one to send up when they call down for the shaver, we don't know which drill bits to send. We don't know which burrs to send. We don't know it, because it's 2 separate sets of inventory, and that's just one item. Now multiply that by every service in your department. That's where that whole complexity theory starts to make sense. Inconsistent manual processes. How many of you have seen something go through the washer that shouldn't go through the washer? Because we didn't have anything to stop us from doing it, like scanning a load to the washer. How many have had melted cameras? I remember when I was still in the operating room, before I had come, we had just started using Stryker laparoscopic stuff. Beautiful, beautiful new cameras and light cords that didn't twinkle like the lights at night. And about 30,000 of them went into the sterilizer, into the steam sterilizer, because we didn't have instrument tracking. We didn't have vendors coming in and giving in services first. Put it in a pan, wrap it, and put it in the sterilizer. So we had a lot of melted cameras. Unexpected changes in workload. Sometimes it's feast or famine in the decon and the prep area. And just whenever you think, it's going to be a nice evening, 52 loaner pans come in, right? rapidly decreasing storage space. Does anybody have room for the stuff that you have? We just took 155 loaner pans off of our shelves that were just kind of living there. We don't have room for that. Keeping up with the recommendations and standards is another thing. So Joint Commission, AORN, AMI, ISHM, they restrict IUSS to emergency use only. So our response to that is to make sure we have some tray redundancy, right? I've got a backup tray. If something happens to this tray in surgery, I've got another one. But where the heck am I going to put it, right? Greater oversight is becoming the norm. In the VA especially, we don't even sweat inspections anymore because we do one about every other day. So we don't just have the Joint Commission in the VA. We have the folks from our National Program Office that come to see us about every 3 years. We have people from our VISN, our Veterans Integrated Service Network. They come every year. And then we do tracers with infection control 3 times a month. So we're constantly doing that. Cleaning, packaging, sterilization of surgical stainless steel, like I said, it's not a complicated process, but it's complex. So I don't have the fancy polling question thing, so you're just going to have to, do this. How many of you have to do quick turns in your facility, have a process in place for quick turns? Pretty much everybody, all right? Is the expectation of quality any different? No, it's not any different. How do we communicate the increased risk to our customers when they say, well, we got the loaners there within 48 hours, but we're going to use them today and we're going to use them again tomorrow? That's not 48 hours anymore. How are we going to properly reprocess that tray if we're not given the correct amount of time to do it? So what does success look like? Does it look like that? So what it looks like is effective communication, clean, sterile, complete instrument trays, case carts. You open it up, you have what you need. You don't have a whole bunch to send back down, right? Your returns don't look like that. That is an actual return cart right there in the right corner. That's what came back after the case was over, right? We need appropriate storage and transport of our things. Pre-treatment at the point of use, clear, accessible. Policies, procedures, instructions for use. So one source has been a real boon to us. I remember coming into the OR at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and needing to set up a cell saver, and I hadn't set up a cell saver in years. And there's no manual, there's no book, there's no anything. That was the horrible end of that spectrum. Now we've come to another spectrum where we have so many tools that people don't even know where to start looking at their tools in the VA. So one source has been helpful for us for that. Evidence-based processes, evidence-based device selection. So does everybody agree that this is the goal, right? So this is the reality. My favorite part of this is the little rocket going off here and the parachute coming down and the spider web. And this is kind of what our flow map looks like if we graph it. So the first thing we have to do as a group is identify who our customers and shareholders are. So we know we've got to communicate. Everybody always says the worst problem we have in healthcare, in technology, the worst problems we have in business, in industry, in the church, in our family is communication, right? But the first step to take to communicate is to know who it is that you're wanting to talk to. So we need to talk to our surgeons, our OR staff, our leadership, that's obvious. Supply chain, I don't know, some places the sterile processing CS and supply chain are joined. They're divided in the VA. So we split those two things apart and made them services independently on their own. But I've heard somebody say once that it was kind of like sawing a boat in half and expecting both sides to still float. So we still need to do a lot of communication with our supply chain side. Biomed, facilities management, infection prevention and risk, fiscal and the C-suite. How do we communicate with these people? So we want to build a team. There are many disciplines involved in the care of the patient. Probably the most vital team that we can build is with our OR partners. And that's why there's so much talk about communication, SPD, the OR. You can't swing a cat by the tail without somebody having a presentation about how OR and SPD, CS, SPS, to help them get along. But we're still not getting along, right? It's got to center around the patient's needs first. If it's not patient-centered, it's not going to work. We focus on process improvement, not blame. I hate being at the other end of the blame game. Unfortunately, we do it a lot in healthcare. We do it a lot in surgery and SPS and OR. Collaboration, collegial culture development. Right? There is no hierarchy of importance. We are all a part of this very important wheel. Development of respect for understanding the roles in patient care. And Summer Williamson thought that I should now break into RESPCT. That is what we need. We have to have it. I think we ought to have it playing in the department before every meeting. It's just to have Aretha play respect. We've got to have mutual respect and understanding of our roles. They don't have to know everything that we do. We don't have to know everything that they do, but we have to have a healthy respect for all of our roles in patient care. We have to work together to improve outcomes, and we'll do the team training. We've done team training many, many times, and it's only as good as what the people are willing to put into it. So, how many of you have worked with people that would rather be right than do right? Right? I can speak to this a lot because I'm a person that likes to be right. I read all the time because I just like to be right. I'm the Google queen. I like to be right. But when it boils down to where the rubber hits the road, we've got to do right. And that's why it has to, again, be patient-focused. Not what's the right thing for SPS. I get so confused. We have so many names. I'm going to call it sterile processing. So not what's right for our department, not what's right for their department, not what's right for the budget necessarily, what's right for the patient. Let me make sure that there's not anything good in my notes. Nah, okay. So this is one of the tools that I recommend that everyone implement, and I know that it's not a meeting, okay? This particular huddle. So I've gone to huddles that are actually a meeting. You're actually sitting down at a table and you're talking about a bunch of stuff. This is not that. Daily huddles ensure that all the loaner trays, prosthetic items, instrument sets are ready for cases. Identify and talk about recurrent issues at these huddles. And if you have a problem that keeps coming up, it needs to go on the huddle board and get worked through and do something called a PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. It's part of the whole continuous quality improvement. I know that continuous quality improvement is continuous, so it's almost like, I don't know, a death march, but no. It is something that we have to continue to do, because if we keep doing it the same way every day and having the same problems and it never gets addressed, it's a morale killer. And you've all been there. You get up in the morning and you go in, and the same problem that was there 5 years ago is still there, and nobody's doing anything about it. How easy is it going to be engaged and excited about your workday? And if we're not, that's a miserable way to live for 30 years, not being engaged in what you're doing. Biomed. I don't know if it's just us, but our biomedical engineering folks come and see us every single day. They pop into my office and they want to know what they can do for us. It's a wonderful relationship to have. We had a cart washer that I was like, what is happening to my instrument or my carts? What is happening to these carts? They look terrible. So I went and looked at the cart washer, and there was this black film all over the walls of the cart washer. Someone had changed the wheels on our case carts. They put wheels that were not heat rated, so that they were kind of melting in the cart washer a little bit at a time and just shooting this like rubber film all over the inside of our case carts. Biomed drilled it down. They drilled it down. They worked with us. We did a bunch of things. We looked at chemicals. We looked at all this stuff. Come to find out it was the wheels. They ordered hundreds and hundreds of sets of bright red wheels. So now we know that if the wheels aren't red, we can't put that cart in the cart washer. So they helped us a lot with that. But they also partner for equipment upgrades. Biomed can give us reports on what is costing us the most money, so that we can either change brands, get a different equipment company, or just to upgrade what we have. Standards compliance for environmental management, our FMS folks they're wonderful to have around whenever you have Joint Commission knocking at your door. And then you find out what goes on behind their scene. So, infection control, risk management. I had an infection control nurse that made me learn, because she made our life impossible. If I didn't research everything, she was one of those that needed to be right too. So we were a little like this. But she made me better, and I made her better. They're a valuable resource. If you have an engaged infection preventionist, you can't be everywhere. You can't see what everybody is doing with your stuff once it leaves your department. But when they do tracers, they do. They can help you identify issues. We also have them coming by the office every single day. I have someone from infection prevention in my office every day. Fiscal and top leadership. So I had a discussion with Grace yesterday. We were talking about this, and one of the things that SenseTrack helps us do is do the visual management. You talk about complexity theory. When you're the director of a major healthcare facility, you've got an awful lot of irons in the fire. We have to be able to get information to them quickly, and they have to know clear, concise communication, quality defects, system vulnerabilities. Don't tell me everything's going great and then we have a big problem and we've known about it for a while, but nobody communicated it to the C-suite so that they could do something about it. A good leader's job is to find the best people he or she can find, give them the resources they need to do their job properly, and get the heck out of the way. And that's all that we can do as good leaders. So we need to assess our department in terms of manufacturing concepts like lean, because more and more directors want to see what you're doing to continuously improve your department. And money crunchers need numbers. I've used to get kind of a little frustrated with people when they would say, but I need this and I need this and I need, why do you need it? Tell me where we're starting. They said, I think we should do this to improve it. And I'm like, okay, I really do care what you think. I do care what you think, but I care more about what you know. Give me some numbers. So whenever you want to take a need to these guys, tell them the problem that it's going to solve, measure it, and give them a future state. Why is this a good investment? That's the way they need to see it. So improvement tools, standardization is big. PDSA, PDCA, they're the same thing. Plan, do, study, act. Plan, do, check, act. Lean project management, and the huddle board. I'll get a little bit more into that in a bit. These are actual pictures taken years ago in my facility. That is a case cart. So much stuff. And it's because we don't standardize. The likelihood of getting something wrong goes up tremendously with the more stuff you have. We need to, so everybody wants to order new stuff. Nobody wants to get rid of any old stuff. So then we end up with a shelf that looks a lot like this, all right? Variation reports are gonna help you with a lot of that. So this was part of that project I was telling you about whenever we wanted to fix our sterilization parameters. These are just a few of our instruments, and those were all the different cycles that we were using on them. It's just the way they got put into the system. We are now fixing this. However, for us to correct the data ourselves, we will have to go in and one instrument at a time. That's not going to happen. Fortunately, Census has a solution for us that I've got to present to my leadership when I get home. So, collaboration culture, what is it? It has a foundation of respect. Respect for each other, for each other's role, mutual trust, to know the other person's motivations, again, are not to be right, but to do right. Being able to compromise. We can't have win-lose anymore, guys, because then it just becomes a power struggle. Nobody wins. It's got to be win-win. And by using evidence-based guidelines to make important decisions, it does become a win-win. It's all balanced on servant leadership. And I know you guys have heard that before. You've heard servant leader before. But tell me who you trust. Do you trust the person that is obviously trying to get ahead? Or do you trust the person that's got your back? Who makes the better leader? That's what being a servant leader is about. When you serve and take care of others' needs, you become an important part of the team and you become a leader. Whether you're the boss or not, you're the leader. So, this is part of a collaborative process. So this particular type of huddle board is an interdepartmental huddle. And not many people can do this. Some places do it well. Some people just do it to check it off as a box. But this is an interdepartmental huddle where the OR and Central Sterile are working on process improvement projects together. This kind of huddle is quick. If you're doing it for longer than 5 minutes, this kind of huddle, you're not doing it right. You talk about the problems every day. You talk about the progress every day, and you post it on this board. Anybody that wasn't at the huddle should be able to come by and look at it and see what's going on. So this was my first huddle board at Bay Pines VA. Everything goes through projects at Bay Pines, and I wanted a dry erase board, a big giant dry erase board. So I was just gonna go, to Staples and get one and put a nail in the wall, and we don't do that. So I couldn't get one. I couldn't get one for the longest time. It was very low on the priority list. These are calendar pages, the big desk blotter calendar pages, and we started. So far, we've been doing it just a little under a year. We started with a couple of just do it's, and that's a thing that is just so, it's like, great, that's a great idea, let's just do it. We don't have to do a process on it. So they would make these suggestions, we would put it, are you guys familiar with a pick chart? So this is our pick chart, and it's hard or easy, high impact or low impact, and anything that is easy and high impact automatically goes to just do it, okay? Things that are more of a challenge but high impact usually go to a PDCA or a belt project. So far, since we've been doing this, we've had about 25 completed tech-driven Just Do It projects that have given our folks ownership of their job. People aren't telling you what to do anymore. You're telling us how you want to do it. That's what this huddle board is all about. We also have 2 yellow belts in progress, 1 green belt in our department, and 2 PDCA projects where we're working on standardization of instruments, case cart optimization, the case cart area, and it's all employee driven, communication driven. So this slide, Ron, are you here? Ron Hesh made this beautiful slide for me because I wanted to show some linkages for how technology, instrument tracking can help us with all of this, depending on where you have everything. So the OR, decon, assembly, sterilizer, storage, case carts, this gives you data, but it also communicates the information that you need to communicate. So how does it help us in the clinics, in the OR? We don't have to look, they don't have to look to see whether we have it or not. We just recently, believe it or not, got an OR scheduler. We're a level 1A facility. We do a ton of work. Orthopedics, lots of loaners, and we just got a scheduler. And she's here. She's here today. Where are you at, Danielle? She better be here. No, there she is. Danielle has become a great partner of ours, and she's here to learn more about SensaTrack because this gives us real information, right? So whenever they call down and say, do we have this widget or that widget or the other widget, we don't have to get up and go look if it's been scanned properly to the shelf. We just have to say, yeah, we have 5 of these. You can only schedule 4 of those because I have to have a backup, right? I have to have a backup. We enable our OR staff to have access to instrument tracking. Getting them to use it's another thing entirely, but that's going to be our next performance improvement project. Quality events feature can allow the OR staff to communicate status of trays or instruments. It's dull, it's broken, it's dirty, it needs maintenance. They tag our instruments, but some instruments are difficult to tag, right? They're just not made that way. So this helps. They can actually scan that instrument and say it needs to go out for repair. Loaner module. We do not have Loaner Link yet. I'm hoping to have it soon, but loaners, I think you'll agree, they're a special kind of awful, aren't they? You just don't know when they're coming, or arrival times, condition problems, instructions for use. How do we even know what's inside this thing if we don't have a count sheet? I mean, we don't have count sheets. How do we make a count sheet for something we don't own and can't verify if something changed from one case to the other? From data gathering for loaner policy compliance, lead time reports, software that notifies vendors, sterile processing, the OR, and even the surgeon when trays are ordered, when they arrive and when they're ready to use, it gives us better communication without somebody having to stand on the phone, right? So ideally, I don't know 100% how Loaner Link works, but we're going to set it up so that my scheduler knows, the vendor knows, our supervisors know what trays are coming in and who they're going to be used for. And the final will be the surgeon. I want to set it up to tell my surgeon, your instruments are in case cart so-and-so and in the OR ready for your procedure at 0700. So, how awesome would that be? So, each field filled with red, that's red outlining, is required for checking in. Inventory throughput report. This is an example of a couple of different reports. What it all boils down to is we are all in the same boat, okay? And just because these guys aren't feeling the pain right now doesn't mean that they are not going to feel the pain if these guys can't bail fast enough. This is one of my favorites. Surgery, the operating room, central supply, supply chain, we all have a shared goal. Miscommunication is going to stop us from meeting that goal. We have to identify obstacles and work on them one piece at a time. But that big one is communication. Use your quality tools, standardize your processes, your product, your throughput as much as possible, right? Do it the same way every time. Collaborate with your folks. Build each other up. You can't tear each other down and get anywhere. And use your technology. I got a few references there. And questions. If I did my job right, you won't have any. But no, I'm kidding. Any questions about the huddle board or the pick chart? Because I can send you guys some information on that stuff if you're not already doing it. We do, in the VA, we do something called an all-employee survey every year. And we had phenomenal increases in employee reports of leadership transparency and leadership trust and communication. And I really believe a lot of that in our department came from us hearing what folks are saying about their job and about what they're doing. Things are not perfect. They're not even really particularly good right now because we're still struggling with bringing new staff on board. We have an old facility that's on the books for a major renovation, but it's better because we're now becoming more of a team. So, any questions from anybody? There's one right. Do we have someone with a mic here?
I can talk really loud.
Oh, hey, Susan. This lady knows lots about sterile processing.
Likewise. So I have two things. One, I love the hairdresser analogy, and I'm going to steal it shamelessly.
Yeah.
The other thing is, so you talk about this multidisciplinary group. In your facility, do you have meetings where this group comes together?
We have a couple of those. We have a couple of informal groups. So the thing that they call the huddle is basically at a certain time of the day, the scheduler, charge nurse, someone from SPS, somebody from logistics, somebody from prosthetics, gets together just to verify that we have what we need for the next day. It's 10, 15 minutes, right? But leadership, OR, the chief of surgery, my chief, I'm the assistant chief. We have the chief of perioperative services. We get together once a week to go over what went well, what didn't go well, what we need to do to make things flow a little more smoothly. And it's a lot harder to throw somebody under the bus if they're your colleague. If you have that collaborative, working together relationship, you don't get nearly as many bus tracks on your face. All right. Anybody else? I am so happy to have had the opportunity to do this. Every time I get up here, I think, why do I do this to myself? But it's because I really love the people that do this work. And I think you guys do too, because you're here. One of the first things I did when I became an educator was go back and do the work. Before I could teach them anything, they had to teach me what they did. And Wayne said to me once, he remembers, he's got this encyclopedic memory. He said, you used to call them those people, but now I am those people, right? So it has been a wonderful journey. I thank you all for being here. I applaud you all for what you do every single day. Thank you very much.
Sheryl, thank you very much for the time and investment you spent to share your information.
Thank you. I have no idea if I'm on time or not.
Oh, that was a perfect time. We're going to break here for a few minutes, but I just want to take a few minutes before we do break and just thank you very much. And for all of those that volunteer to help us make presentations during CtUC. It's so much better to hear from our actual customers. You guys know this better than we do. And so I just want to let everyone know how much we appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
Absolutely great. Listen, everyone, we're going to take a few minutes and break. We're going to